Hey everybody, Dustin here. Welcome back to another video. Now, I know it has been a while since I've done a documentary video, and of course with the success of the Titanic one that I have done, I figured, you know what, why not do another one? Originally, I was going to do one on the Andrea Doria, but I decided to push that back to in the next few years, 2026, which is the, if I'm correct, the 70th anniversary of the sinking. And also, I will do a Lusitania one next year, considering the fact that one's the 110th anniversary of the sinking of the Lusitania. Now, for this one, it is recently new. And of course, for those that actually don't know, I have been, away from doing maritime history videos because I went to a lot of different concerts. I went one up in the Capitol Theater in Macon. I also went to Truist Park for Def Leppard and Journey, and also went to Nashville as well. And I've actually had a grand time at both of those. You actually do feel free to check those out. I used to do concert videos back in the day, and I still do occasionally now and then. Feel free to check out that playlist. I will actually have it as a card on the top corner of your screen or down in the description box below. Also, I went to the NASCAR Xfinity and Cup Series races up in Atlanta. I've actually did have a grand time at both of those, so do feel free to check out those two videos. I will leave a card on the top corner of your screen for you guys to check out. So, without further ado, this one, it has been a recent topic. It's just have been recently discovered. And for those that actually do know what this ship is, it does have a connection to the Olympic-class liners, considering the fact that this ship was involved in an incident with the RMS Olympic, the sister ship to the Titanic. So join us as we learn about the HMS Hawke. As many of you know, at the time of this recording, on August 11th of 2024, divers from the Lawson Waters Deep on board the dive vessel Edgar-Class dived down 70 miles east off the coast of Fraserburgh, Scotland, and forgive me if I do butcher that city name, and found the Royal Navy battlecruiser, the HMS Hawke. The HMS Hawke is a battlecruiser that was lost on October 15th of 1914 after being torpedoed by the Imperial German Navy sub SMU-9. The ship sank with a loss of 524 officers and men, including the captain that was actually on board. And as many of us know in the ocean liner community, especially to those that are interested in the learning about the RMS Titanic and her sister ships, the Hawke was involved in a collision with the White Star Line's newest vessel, the RMS Olympic, while traveling through the Solent River. The bow of the Hawke smashed in and damaged the Olympic, and in the process breaching two watertight compartments and twisted a propeller shaft. Large waters that was actually displaced by the Olympic generated a suction drew the Hawke off course, but the blame was actually put on the White Star Line by the Royal Navy. So today, 110 years later, we're going to tell the full story of the HMS Hawke from its construction, the early years, sinking, and the discovery. The HMS Hawke's keel was laid down in the Chatham Dockyard as Yard 544 on June 17th of 1889. The HMS Hawke is one of the 9 Edgar-Class cruisers ordered under the Naval Defense Act of 1889. So what is the Naval Defense Act? Well, the Naval Defense Act was actually ratified to make further provision for the naval defense and defray of the expenses thereof. It was passed under the government of Lord Salisbury and facilitated a spending of 21,500,000 British pounds over the 5 years towards fleet expansion. This act actually did call the Royal Navy to maintain a number of battleships, at least equal to 2 of the largest navies of the time, the French and Russia. This expansion came in the form of 10 battleships, 42 cruisers, and 18 torpedo gunboats. And of course, since we're actually talking about the HMS Hawke, I will actually use this model of the USS Maine as a stand-in because this ship actually has a similar build, but unfortunately Histobrick does not have the HMS Hawke. So Tom, if you're watching this, please let's have a Histobrick model of the HMS Hawke. The Hawke was launched on March 11th of 1891 and fitting out process would begin. She consists of 2 9.2-inch guns on the center line, backed up by 10 6-inch guns. 4 were casemates on the main deck. 12 6-pounders and 4 3-pounder guns provided for anti-torpedo boat defenses. The Hawke would be commissioned in 1893 serving the Mediterranean fleet, remaining on the station for most of the decade. From 1897 to 1898, the HMS Hawke had military action as the ship was under command by this man, Captain Sir Richard Poor. The ship was in the Mediterranean in operations, which led to the pacification of Crete and the appointment of Prince George of Greece as High Commission under the suzerainty of the Sultan of Turkey. At one point, the Hawke was used as a troop ship, taking on military force from Greece in Platina Bay and transported them back to Greece. The uprising prompted Greece to land a Greek army expeditionary force of 1,500 men on Crete to support the Croatian insurgency, which actually turned into the outbreak of the Greco-Turkish War of 1897, also known as the 30 Days War. Unfortunately, this would actually result in the disastrous defeat of the Greek army, and this ceasefire actually required the Greek army to withdraw forces from Crete. In February of 1902, the Hawke received orders to convey relief to the Cape of Good Hope station. The ship left Chatham with new crews for the British vessels of Fort, Dwarf, and Partridge. Unfortunately, none of the last two ships happened to have photos online. In August, the Hawke took part in the fleet review held at Spithead for the coronation of King Edward VII. Afterwards, she left Chatham to convey relief crews for the vessels of Vulcan, Foam, Rooster, Dragon, and Boxer, to which all served in the Mediterranean. In 1903 and 1904, the Hawke was ordered to convey relief crews to ships on the Mediterranean stations, and at this time it would be the HMS Pyramus, Speedy, Dryad, and Imogene, and forgive me if I do butcher those names. All had been recommissioned for new terms. Then in 1904, in November, the Hawke became the boys' training ship as part of the 4th Cruiser Squadron up until August of 1906, then joined the torpedo school at Sheerness, and finally in 1907, she joins the home fleet. Now, in the next 4 years, the Hawke actually does have a clean record, but all that changed when a White Star liner of a known sister ship had her encounter with the battlecruiser in September of 1911. The ship you see in this photo is the RMS Olympic, White Star Line's newest four-funnel ocean liner, and the first of the newest class of ocean liners, the Olympic-Class. Along her are her two sister ships, the RMS Titanic and the soon-to-be HMS Britannic. I have done a documentary on the RMS Titanic, so feel free to check that out. The incident happened on September 20th of 1911 off Cowes of the Isle of Wight as the Olympic was on her 5th voyage from Southampton under the command of Captain Edward J. Smith. The Hawke was on her way to Portsmouth. As we all know, both ships were actually running parallel with each other, side by side, each other through the Solent. The Olympic was about to turn left and sounded 2 whistle blasts, which actually does mean I am turning left. Olympic followed that channel from Southampton water to sea from the intersection, and once she arrives at this intersection, and of course I'm using Titanic, so yeah, I do have HMT Olympic, but that would basically throw everything off. And of course, you must take a 6-point turn to port. And as the Hawke was actually coming up through the channel about the same distance from the intersection as the Olympic, now unknowingly, and I actually read this through the U.S. Naval Institute, it's not for certain if the Hawke attention to or made acknowledgement to the blasts, but actually did maintain speed. The Hawke also did not make any passing signals before attempting to overtake the Olympic, so as thereof no answer was made by the Olympic. One of the men that on board the RMS Olympic is First Officer William McMaster Murdoch. He stood on the docking station at the stern to make sure that the stern of the Olympic is clear of the Hawke. But he was at the raised stern section, which is called the poop deck on the Olympic, but he actually did not witness what was coming up next. The Hawke was actually caught by surprise at the suction of the RMS Olympic, thus the wide radius of her turn took the commander by surprise as the ship was unable to take action, thus drawing in the Hawke into the Olympic, and what happened next is the inevitable. Fortunately, no one was hurt or killed in the incident, but both ships were damaged. The bow of the Hawke, which is ironically designed to ram into enemy vessels, is crumbled in and destroyed. The resulting damage from the RMS Olympic was basically 2 large gashes, especially around in the stern area. 2 flooded compartments within the engine room, and a twisted shaft on the starboard side. But she was actually able to limp her way back into Belfast for repairs, and to expedite, Harlan and Wolfe obliged to replace the damaged shaft from the Olympic with one from its upcoming sister ship, the Titanic, delaying the completion of the ship. But unfortunately for the Hawke, ironically, this part of the bow right here, and of course, once again, I am using the USS Maine, the bow is actually designed to ram into enemy ships. However, this one actually took a wallop punch. So now who is actually to blame? Well, this is actually a huge question, since both the White Star Line and the Royal Navy were actually pointing fingers at each other on who's to blame. The first story was the Olympic blamed the HMS Hawke, with reason for making a miscalculation and failure to communicate with the Olympic as she was making her turn, and accused the commander, William Blunt, of showing off his new command vessel. The Royal Navy would turn this around and blame the Olympic, alleging the large displacement generated a suction that pulled the Hawke into her side, to which Captain Smith agreed on. Now keep this in mind though, even though this happened under the command of Captain Edward J. Smith, and even though he was on the bridge and in command, you have to remember he wasn't at the helm. The man who was responsible for maneuvering the Olympic through the Solent was this man, harbor pilot George William Boyer. He was also involved in the near miss on the Titanic with her near collision with the SS City of New York. This would be a huge financial disaster for the White Star Line as they faced legal bills and the cost of repairing the RMS Olympic, patching up the holes just to return to Belfast, and permanent repairs for 6 weeks, thus keeping her out of revenue service. White Star Line also tried to appeal, but lost. The Olympic would later return to service on November 20th of 1911. So, what do I find during the inquiries? Well, there was actually 3 different wrongs. Now, the first one, the Hawke had the right-of-way over the Olympic. Now, the Hawke did slow down, which to allow the Olympic to turn into the channel, but there was also a third reason in the finding of the inquiry that is actually put the Hawke at fault as well. The Hawke actually put herself into a dangerous position by increasing her speed to pass the Olympic, and also, you have to remember, these Olympic-class liners, they're giants. Not many people would actually know how to properly steer one of these ships, and interestingly enough, there was also a almost near collision with the Titanic with another ship that was actually moored in Southampton called the SS City of New York, almost in the same style as the Hawke and Olympic collision, which is actually around that time it would be a bad omen. Now, an interesting fact about this whole incident is there were actually 2 notable crew members that was actually on board the Olympic and later survived both the sinkings of both the RMS Titanic and the HMHS Britannic later on, and that would actually be both Violet Jessup, who was actually a stewardess on both the Olympic and Titanic, and also a nurse on board the HMHS Britannic, and stoker Arthur John Priest. Now, I won't go over those 2 because these 2 actually do have a video of their own from another channel, which is called History Inside a Nutshell. Now, there is an interview from Violet Jessup herself. Now, due to copyright reasons, I'm not allowed to basically show it to you on this channel, but I can actually link it to you from this video, so feel free to check that out. And there's also another one from Arthur John Priest, which is basically an interview. So, back to this video. So, at an unknown time, the Hawke's bow, which was ironically this right here, was actually replaced with a straight bow, as we all know that has been confirmed during the dive down to the HMS Hawke. But when did the repairs start and ended? It hadn't been found or known to this very day. So from 1911 to 1914, it seems that the world is at peace for now, but sometime in 1914, political tensions seems to be on the rise. Then, on July 28, 1914, a massive global conflict erupts across Europe.